22nd day of February 2024. Just in case you forgot, it's only 1 week to the end of the month. We'll be getting into March, just signaling how fast the year is passing by. Now, welcome to the Morning Drift. This particular morning, I'm sitting in for Simba Elijah Charles Kiage. Of course, on this particular morning that MPs are under scrutiny over the passing of the Affordable Housing Bill, a bill that the opposition says was passed by force by the ruling coalition. And of course, at some point in time in that particular debate yesterday, beg your pardon, the legislators, allied to the opposition, did walk out of this session in the parliament, citing frustration and the use of force by the ruling coalition, who are the majority. Now, that among some of the stories that we'll be looking at this particular morning. Remember, you can watch this particular show live on our Facebook and YouTube pages at Lookuptv. That being one of the stories making headlines across the country. Just a day after the cabinet, or rather government retreat in Naivasha came to a close, with the president addressing the nation in regards to the state of the economy. For the past 1 week or so, we've been witnessing, not even 1 week, 1 or 2 weeks, a couple of weeks, we've been witnessing of course, Kenyan shilling appreciating. Some argue that it is not the Kenyan shilling appreciating, it is the dollar that is depreciating. We'll be also looking deeper into that in regards to the Kenyan shilling appreciating and what it means for the Kenyan economy, even as Kenyans continue to decry the high cost of living across the country. Now, I just want us to jump straight away to the newspaper review because of time, and I beg we start with the Daily Nation. And the big story on the Daily Nation is, just like I said or alluded to a few moments ago, is the Affordable Housing Bill, and they say exposed 149 MPs who failed Kenyans. Remember, in the beginning, on Tuesday, 199 MPs were in the House during the second reading of this particular bill. Now, 141 MPs voted for the bill. 58 voted against or rejected, if you call it that, the bill in its entirety. Now, yesterday, after the bill passed to the second reading stage, amendments were being made by various legislators, and safe to say, most of the amendments proposed by the opposition-allied lawmakers were rejected. As we all know, the debate surrounding this affordable housing program and most bills in parliament revolves around these numbers. In parliament, it's all about numbers, and we do know that the ruling coalition, which is the Kenya Kwanza coalition, boasts of having the majority in the National Assembly and also the Senate. And with that, they of course bulldozed, if we'd call it that, the Affordable Housing Bill, which yesterday passed the third reading stage and is now heading to the Senate for the first reading. Remember, the Kenya Kwanza administration is in a race against time to ensure that the deductions, the 1.5% for the housing levy, returns next month. So they have to beat the deadline, and at least according to Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah, they have to ensure that by the 15th of March, everything is set and ready to roll, thus ensuring that Kenyans will have to part with 1.5% of their income, because as opposed to how it has been, it is only salaried Kenyans who are contributing to this particular bill. Now, in a ruling on the 28th of November 2023, the three-judge bench, Lawrence Mugambi, Christine Miole, and of course Justice David Majanja, ruled that that particular criteria was unfair and discriminatory. Why? Because even those in the informal sector were most likely to benefit from this particular program, even though they were not contributing. Now, that forced the Kenya Kwanza side, led by Kimani Ichung'wah, the majority leader rather, to find a way to ensure that they can deal with that particular discrepancy. And the only way they could go about that is to ensure that any Kenyan with an income will have to contribute to the affordable housing program. Now, question is, if those in the informal sector are contributing, what are the set procedures, or how do you determine someone's income who's not salaried, someone who depends on, for example, a farmer, because even farmers will now pay for the affordable housing program. They'll have to contribute to that particular program. So how do you get to understand or know whatever amount of money someone has racked in, so that you can be able to deduct 1.5% of that money? That is one of the discrepancies that the opposition lawmakers do say has not been addressed in this particular affordable housing bill. Now, they say when a crucial vote on a bill imposing a housing levy that has generated huge public interest came up in the House on Tuesday evening, 149 MPs, despite their previous public show of approval or disapproval, were a no-show. An even bigger group snubbed the final legislative stage yesterday. That story is on page 6, 7, and 8. And if you want to know where your legislator stands, you have to go to page 7 just to get to understand where did your legislator vote, because they've classified those who voted yes, of course, in support of the bill, those who voted no, rejecting the bill, and those who failed to show up in the National Assembly. And of course, as you expected, a majority of those who voted against the bill are from the opposition coalition, and almost of the 50 plus are members of the Orange Democratic Movement. And of course, those who voted for it, majority of them are from the ruling coalition, which is the Kenya Kwanza side. But questions have been raised about the 149 MPs who missed these particular crucial sessions. And of course, most of them are those who would take opportunity during public rallies or so to, of course, voice their disapproval of this particular bill. Just so you know, like I said, if that bill sees the light of day, which most likely will, because Kenya Kwanza side will still use their majority or their strength in numbers in the Senate to ensure that that particular bill sees the light of day, like Majority Leader Aaron Cheriot did allude to during the first day of the government retreat in Nakuru County, rather. Now, the other story on the front page of the Daily Nation, they say roadmap to fix debt mess and pay suppliers. They say the Parliamentary Budget Office recommends reduced borrowing to manage public debt that has surged past the 11 trillion mark. Now, together with reserving 20% of budgetary allocations for a staggered payments of 794 billion owed to suppliers to boost private sector productivity, the economy experts say the country could begin to turn the tide. Now, they say there are 5 ways out of the debt all, and one is borrowing should not exceed the 22 billion mark in the 2024-25 financial year. The second one is that they have to allocate 150 billion annually for over the next 5 years to pay suppliers. That is, of course, to boost the private sector. The third one is a transparent government plan on the depreciating shilling as well as Eurobond payment. Targeted investments across export businesses, including Hustler Fund. Support to specific exporters is the fourth one. And finally, the fifth one is tighten controls on emergency government spending, like 47 billion rejected, like this, 47 billion rejected by the controller of budget. Now, according to President Ruto yesterday in Naivasha, he said, yesterday, which is now Tuesday, marked a significant financial milestone for Kenya as we successfully settled the buyback of a substantial part of the $2 billion 2014 Eurobond that were scheduled to mature on 24th June 2024, and that is through the paying of the $1.5 billion raised on 12th of February 2024. Now, just to wrap up on the Daily Nation, one other story is, on grounds of, private farms running e-citizen. That is a flag raised by the controller of budget, that is Margaret Nyakango, as well. The other story is an autopsy that was now done by government pathologist, that is Johansen Oduor, regarding the death or cause of death of, one Kelvin Kiptum. And he says Kiptum died of, head injuries after the road crash along the Elgeyo Marakwet ravine route. Now, on the back page, like I said, is a story by, Auditor General Nancy Gathungu, regarding the private firms running the e-citizen platform. Remember, the number of services under the e-citizen platform or government services currently stands at 15,440. Now, on that note, let's just jump straight to the Standard. And the top story is on regards to matters education. And they say, exposed, 883 million scam in universities. They say Parliament is investigating how Higher Education Placement Agency, that is, KUCCPS, disbursed 883 million to finance students who had already graduated from private universities. That follows the Auditor General's, report. That is one Nancy Gadungu. They say the amount that 15 universities are set to refund to the government for students not placed under the, KUCCPS is 201 million Kenya shillings. That is a story that, is on the second page of this particular newspaper. And of course, the Education Committee, led by one MP for Tinderet, I believe, that is Melly, will be trying to, unravel what happened and how these particular, funds can be recovered or, reimbursed by those particular universities that received the funds. The other top story on the front page of the Standard is the housing bill, and they say RUTO MPs ram housing bill through Parliament. Emphasis on ram, that is the choice of, term that the Standard have decided to use, and they say opposition MPs walk out of the House as President William Ruto scores his third and crucial win with the passage of the Affordable Housing Bill 2023 that introduces new taxes to Kenyans, or rather on Kenyans, to fund the affordable housing project. Now that, we've talked about that. I wouldn't really delve much into that. Now, on the far right is Raila succession, they say. Titans line up to take the mantle. Of course, if Raila Odinga decides to, he already decided to, go for the chairmanship of the African Union Commission, that means he will leave the local political scene. Now, who will succeed Raila Odinga? Several people are aspiring to replace, of course, Raila Odinga in that particular capacity as the leader of opposition. The people fronted Oparanya, the former Kakamega County Governor, Ali Hassan Joho, the former Mombasa County Governor, Kalonzo Musyoka is there. The Azimio coalition, leaders are also there, Martha Karua, Eugene Omalo and the likes. Time will tell what the members will finally, or will rather who will Raila Odinga pick as his successor in the local political scene. Now, on the back page of the Standard, as we wrap up the newspaper review, they say, will Liverpool, Man City, or Arsenal come out on top? Talking of Arsenal, before I wrap up the newspaper review this morning, yesterday I told Arsenal folks here that they'll be humble because the UEFA Champions League is all about pedigree and experience. It's not about vibes and inshallah. They called me a madman, only to fall to a 94th minute winner in Portugal, meaning they trailed by a solitary goal as they prepare for the second leg in 3 weeks' time. And I'll say it here again. You cannot be calling yourselves favorites to win the Champions League when you've waited 10 years, a decade, to register 0 shots on target in a Champions League knockout game. That's not how champions operate. Sorry to say, I don't see Arsenal going to the next round. You had here. You had it here first. To my Arsenal friends, sorry to say, but you lack the pedigree in matters Champions League football. The favorites are obviously Manchester City and Real Madrid. Some would argue Inter Milan can also be the favorites to win the Champions League. But adding Arsenal into that particular equation is not something we can argue about. Arsenal can only fight for the Premier League, which, again, I can say confidently, they will not win. Burnley is not playing in Europe. You can score 10 goals against Burnley and West Ham combined. But in Europe, it doesn't matter. When the likes of Martinelli, Bukayo Saka had 0 shots on target 0 tackles, zero dribbles completed. It's really embarrassing. That was such a very embarrassing performance from Arsenal. But on that particular note, we wrap up the newspaper review here on the Morning Drift. I know Simba will be texting me later on complaining of why I've, bashed Arsenal this morning, but kama ibada. Now on that note, we just take a short breather. We'll be back with the stories making headlines across the country this particular morning. Don't go away. Oh, thank you very much for staying with us. It is time for the stories making headlines across the country now. And a post-mortem report, or the exercise conducted on the body of marathon record holder Kelvin Kiptum, has revealed that he died from a severe head trauma. Addressing the media, government pathologist Johansen Oduor noted that the extensive skull fractures were caused by the fatal car crash along the Elgeyo Marakwet Ravine Road 10 days ago.
Following allegations of possible foul play in the death of marathon record holder Kelvin Kiptum, government pathologist Johansen Oduor has disclosed that Kiptum died from severe head trauma consistent with the road accident.
I'm through with the postmortem of the body of the late Kelvin Kiptum. So upon doing the postmortem, the finding was as follows. First of all, what we found that the late Kelvin had severe head injuries. There were severe skull fractures, which were mainly at the base of the skull. The spinal cord had intruded into the cranial cavity because of the fractures. Further to that, there were some fractures on the ribs, both sides. On the left side, the first, second, and third rib were fractures, and on the right side, the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and seventh ribs were fractured. There are also what is called contusions on the lungs, meaning that there were also injuries to the lungs. So what actually killed the late Kelvin was severe head injuries, which when I look at them, they look more of something which was caused by a motor vehicle accident.
Dr. Oduor further added that biological samples have been collected from the deceased for further analysis to determine whether any external factors played a role in the demise of Kiptum.
We've taken samples for further analysis because the circumstance of the death is still being investigated. So there are some samples we've taken which will undergo what is called a full toxicological analysis, so that we can see that whether there was anything that could have contributed to is being involved in the motor vehicle accident. What we are doing is to do what is called toxicological analysis, being that this is a person who was driving, then suddenly he got an accident and passed on. So our question is, what could have contributed to this? Was there something in the system which could have contributed to this? That's why we've taken samples for further analysis.
On the other side, the family of Kiptum has expressed satisfaction with the results of the autopsy, as star athlete Kiptum is said to be accorded a state funeral on Friday that will be attended by President William RUTO.
Sisi kama familia tumeridhika na the process of postmortem. I have witnessed the whole process. We started at 11 and tumemaliza at 13:40. Then we are waiting for the samples that they have said they will be taken for analysis, and we are okay with the process of postmortem.
The renowned athlete died in a tragic road accident about 2 weeks ago along the Doris Ravine Road. George Kayesi, Lookuptv.
Now, Kenyans might yet again start parting with 1.5% of their salaries for the affordable housing program starting next month. This follows amendments made to the Affordable Housing Bill to ensure it conforms to the law. This follows the ruling by the court that halted the deductions, citing failure to adhere to several articles of the Kenyan Constitution.
Despite the courts halting the collection of the housing levy, in what was a reprieve for millions of Kenyans, the contributions to the affordable housing program are set to resume as from next month. These follows amendments made to the Affordable Housing Bill, tabled by Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah, with 141 MPs voting for the bill yesterday. After the amendments, all Kenyans with income, whether in formal or informal sectors, are set to part with a portion of their income to facilitate the housing project, as opposed to how it has been before, where only Kenyans in the formal sector saw their salaries deducted. In their ruling on November 8, 2023, Justices David Majanja, Christine Miele, and Lawrence Mugambi found the imposition of the housing levy unfair, discriminatory and irrational, saying informal income earners are excluded in supporting the national housing policy. It is all smiles for President William Ruto, with the government set to collect more than the current 63 billion shillings, with more Kenyans set to contribute to the affordable housing program. The bill also provides a legal framework for the establishment of the Affordable Housing Fund, access to affordable housing, and in particular gives effect to Article 43 of the Kenyan Constitution on the right to adequate housing, with the deductions set to resume as from next month after the amendments are made and the bill forwarded to the Senate. The opposition has continued to oppose the bill, noting that it was an additional burden to Kenyans, especially those in the Juakali sector. Additionally, the opposition has raised concerns on the ownership of those affordable houses, casting aspersions as to whether Kenyans in the lowest cadre of life will eventually own a house. President William Ruto has time and again reiterated that the housing program aims to not only solve the housing puzzle, but also create employment for the millions of unemployed youth. Ian Kitane, Lookuptv.
That the independence of the judiciary in the country is on the line due to acute shortage of funding from the exchequer, vilification and criticism of judges, and utter disobedience of court orders. Kome says inadequate funding in particular has negatively affected the operations of the judiciary, with the arm of government forced to bear a huge backlog of as cases are being heard on a priority basis. Henry Tende tells us more.
The country is staring at a dysfunctional judiciary and a collapse of judicial independence if key government officials continue to interfere with the running of this arm of the government. Chief Justice Martha Koome has warned persistent threats on judges coupled with unfair criticism and blatant disobedience of court orders are a direct threat to independence of the judiciary.
We took cognizance of the continued threats to the independence of the judiciary through verification and criticism of judges. We have also taken notes with concern of the continued disobedience of court orders and denial of adequate resources to the judiciary to be able to undertake our work. And we urge Kenyans to continue supporting the independence of the judiciary.
Far from an affront to judicial independence, Martha Koome notes with concern that courts are faced with inadequate resources from the exchequer, with only half of the resources requested allocated to the judiciary.
We had requested for 43 billion according to the needs of the judiciary. Human resource capacity, the number of judges, magistrates and staff who can be able to serve Kenya all over, the infrastructure development and other tools that we require to serve Kenyans. We had requested for 43 billion, but we were able to get 20 billion. And that shortage persists.
The acute funding, Koome argues, has affected justice delivery and is causing a huge backlog of cases across the country.
The superior courts will endeavor to accord priority to time-sensitive cases to ensure their conclusion in a timeous manner.
While addressing the perception of deep-rooted corruption in the judiciary, CJ Koome has urged a structured way of addressing concerns touching on the judiciary instead of attacking the entire justice system. She notes, however, judiciary has addressed cases of corruption.
We have also addressed the issue of the fight against corruption and how we can enhance our accountability and seamless service delivery. In this, we want to restate that the judiciary abhors corruption in all its forms and is committed to promote and enforce the principle of zero tolerance to corruption.
Henry Tendanyula, Lookuptv.
Now, President William Ruto has said that Kenya has been rescued from the loan defaulters list after the recent payment of the $1.5 billion of Eurobond debt. Addressing the nation after the National Executive Retreat in Naivasha, Nakuru County, Ruto noted that his government is keen on addressing the national debt, highlighting intentions to increase tax revenues and reduce expenditures to control the rise of debt.
According to President William Ruto, it's a relief for Kenya after making a partial payment of 1.5 billion of the 2 billion 2014 Eurobond, which was due on June 24, 2024.
Yesterday marked a significant financial milestone for Kenya as we successfully settled the buyback of a substantial part of the US dollars 2 billion 2014 Eurobonds that were scheduled to mature on the 24th of June 2024 by paying US dollars 1.5 billion raised on 12th February 2024.
Ruto added that this strategy helped boost investor confidence, significantly strengthening the Kenyan shillings against the US dollar from 162 shillings to 144 and substantially lowering the debt ceiling.
Investor confidence has been significantly enhanced, resulting in the appreciation of the Kenya shilling against the US dollar from an average of 162 shillings to an average of 142 shillings at the moment. In turn, this has reduced our overall debt by Kenya shillings 722 billion and also reduced our debt service costs by Kenya shillings 195 billion over the next years.
The president continued to express hope for the economic stability, emphasizing his main focus on ensuring job opportunities for Kenyans. President Ruto has been actively seeking employment opportunities for Kenyan graduates abroad, with agreements already made to send 2,500 nurses to Saudi Arabia.
Our economy is on a trajectory that will create more jobs and more wealth, finance investment in goods and services, and usher this nation into the era of inclusive growth.
President William Ruto also stated that Kenya has now been removed from the list of nations at risk of defaulting on their debt, underscoring the nation's strong direction in debt management.
I can now confidently say Kenya is no longer in the list of the countries that run the risk of debt default, thanks to the collective effort that has been done by my team at the Treasury and by the whole of government approach.
John Matava, Lookuptv.
Well, that particular story by John Matava wraps up our news stories this particular morning here on the Morning Drift. We'll be taking a short breather. We'll be back with, of course, Calista Zafula and Evans Mercy to discuss the state of the nation as, things stand at the moment following the government retreat in Naivasha, as well as the succession politics now that Raila Odinga will be, of course, gunning for the African Union Commission chairperson seat. If at all he wins that particular seat, what next for opposition in the local politics? That after there's a short break. Don't go away.
Lookuptv welcomes you to attend the first career fair themed The Place of Education and Technical Skills in a Digitally Disruptive Era. The event will be streamed live on our TV and digital platforms. There will be a battery of professional speakers from diverse career disciplines. Join us for an opportunity to sharpen your career choices and make informed decisions for the future at the University of Nairobi Towers on the 22nd of February as from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Don't miss out.
Tere, mambo ni mawili, kufikisha, kumwaga na kurudi. Kulala ni mwaka mpya.
Bua muka we mse.
Wewe kwani vile dereva anaendesha gari vibaya lazima tususe. Anaendesha gari na kwa simu the whole time hata angalia barabara. Wewe mwaka iliyopita peke yake watu zaidi ya 3,000 walipoteza maisha yao barabarani kwa sababu ya tabia kama hizo. Hautatuangamiza tukiona.
Naomba msamaha, nitampeleka vizuri.
Si wameomba msamaha. Sasa tuende tusafiri kwa mwendo wa aste.
Dere Smart hufikisha abiria salama. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwako na NTSA kwa ushirikiano na European Union.
Save a Life is a non-profit organization that has taken the front line in transforming lives in the entire country. So far, we have transformed life of over 100,000 people through our programs, which include medical support, youth empowerment, street family program, feeding program, and climate change. Join us today as we transform lives. As we always say, service to humanity is service to God. Save a life, transforming lives.
Are you an SME looking for a media partner? Look no more, as Lookuptv got you covered for all your visibility and marketing needs. We at Lookuptv understand your business needs and want to work with you on your marketing journey, giving you solutions that will take you to the next level. Call us today on 0707 572 358 or send an email to sales@lookuptv.co.ke and kickstart this amazing journey. Welcome to Lookuptv, your official SME media partner.
The morning drift here on Lookuptv on this 22nd day of February 2024. Now it is time for the big conversation surrounding the state of the nation, as you know, or rather following the retreat by led by President William RUTO and his deputy Rigathi Gachagua, of course attended by several CSs and PSs as well as legislators allied to the Kenya Kwanza administration, of course, that surrounded the performance of this cabinet as well as the Kenyan economy. Now, apart from that, the succession politics of, the opposition is now taking center stage, because if at all Raila Odinga does, or rather indeed, successfully vies to be the chairperson of the African Union Commission, that means he will not be in the local political scene. Now, what next for the opposition? Will Kalonzo Musyoka take the mantle, or will the two ODM deputy party leaders gun for that particular position? I'm talking about Wycliffe Ambetsa Oparanya and Ali Hassan Joho. Now, this particular morning, I'm joined by Calista Zofula. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you.
Thank you very much for joining us this particular morning. Okay. As well, I'm joined by Mr. Evans Massey. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
I mean, it's been a week full of activity here in the country, but of course, two things have stood out this particular week. One is the government retreat, and the president now saying the country is out of risk in regards to matters debt. But the other thing is the affordable housing program, and I'd want us to begin with that, starting with you, Mr. Calista Zofula. First of all, what do you make of the passing of the affordable housing bill by the National Assembly to begin with?
Okay, that one is just it explains how our members of parliament, they don't care about Kenyans. They don't care about us, they don't care about the country. And the house levy, or the housing program, they're even planning to construct houses on government land. And that government land is not owned by anybody. It's like this government is now selling public land to be owned privately, because those houses were supposed to be constructed, then eventually it will become private houses. So our parliament has not taken care of our interests. They have not protected the public, And that is the reason some of us, we shall go to court to stop them. If they have succeeded in implementing house levy, at least they should be stopped constructing houses on public land, because public land is reserved for public use. And you can use public land to construct a project that can benefit public. But if you are saying you are constructing houses on public land, then those houses to be sold to individuals, then they own them. That is the same as selling public land. In fact,
but
this government,
the program is set to benefit Kenyans.
It is not all about benefit. If it is a project and people are putting money through house levy, then they need to buy land. When you look at our country, the government doesn't have enough land. Let's say if we want to do anything that we can say developmental, we need land. Land is supposed to be available for any developmental use, for any public use. Let's say if our country want to, the government want to start investing in manufacturing, the first thing they need is land. And the public land was designed to support the country. Industrial growth, all the developments, all the infrastructure are supposed to be maintaining public land. William Ruto is now selling public land. Members of parliament have helped him by passing that house levy so that he can collect money and put the investment, wrong investment, on public land. Some of us, we shall go to court to stop him, because for me, I don't care whether he's collecting house levy or he's using other means to get money to construct houses. That is not my issue. My issue is you cannot use public land to construct houses, then you sell those houses or those units to individuals.
But these individuals are Kenyans, rather.
They are Kenyans, but they...
So
when we say public use...
What is the alternative in your opinion? What do you want the president to do?
If the government has decided to venture into business of houses, they need to buy land. There are so many lands in Kenya. If you want to do investment, whether you are the president, you are the governor, you can acquire land using the money that you are collecting, then construct houses. We don't have any problem about it. And about house levy, if employees and employers are comfortable, me, I don't care. Let people pay house levy as long as they think it will help them.
Mr. Evans.
Correct. Yeah.
Have MPs failed Kenyans? Because according to the dailies this morning, 149 MPs failed to show up in the National Assembly on Tuesday.
Correct.
So have they failed Kenyans?
Now, the most interesting thing about these whole arrangements, especially in Parliament, and what was happening on the floor of Parliament from Tuesday, yesterday, and I think they might even continue today. What I'll say is when you stay away from a vote on the floor of Parliament, what does that mean? It simply means you are not interested in the outcome of whatever is being debated on that floor. So the 149 who chose to abstain and never to appear anywhere, they're simply telling Kenyans, we are not interested in whatever will be the outcome of that bill that is being legislated. Whether it will go to the president's desk to be appended and become a law, we don't care. If it will fail, we don't care. If it will be charged, the bill will be passed, and then everything that pertains to the bill will come to the common mwananchi, we don't care. So that is a big failure to the people of Kenya. Number two, you realize this country, the biggest problem we have is we do not learn from the experiences. One of the issues why this bill right now is in Parliament, it is because we missed something in the process of how that bill can be well done before it gets into the law or before the governments begin actually to implement it. The initiative as the initiators of the initiative missed something actually. That's why you've seen a few weeks ago when the courts pronounced that there was the procedure by which was undertaken was faulty. Some of the people now realized, okay, because the courts said, one, it didn't involve the people. Our 2010 constitution is very clear about any government initiative must involve the people. The people must be consulted first before now we can begin. Until the people are in agreement is when anything can begin. That's why you saw when the courts pronounced that, a section of the legislators now, okay, realized that was a mistake. Now they went to the ground. Now, hurriedly, they organized those public participation, which are meant to understand some weren't adequate. Yeah. So in the end, what we are doing, what we are seeing on the floor of parliament is we are rushing quickly again through the process. And as Callistus is actually pointing out, litigants are now ready. That is red meat already for the litigants who already have seen those loopholes.
But the bottom line remains.
Correct.
You know, the committee, the committee led by one Molo MP Kimani Kuria did traverse, I think, around 9 or 10 counties to undertake the public participation.
Correct.
So it's safe to say now that has been, dealt with.
The question is, was that public participation adequate? We have 47 counties, and even some counties are too vast, like Nairobi is a vast county in terms of the logistics within Nairobi. Like in Nairobi, you can't do even a public participation for Nairobi alone, county alone. But you can be able to break it down, maybe do the eastern side, the western side, the northern side, and all that. So the public participation, the chairman for budgets, Mr. Kimani, the Honorable Kimani is trying to talk about, wasn't adequate. The ultimate goal is we rush this bill through the floor and then it be signed by the president, because Kimani and maybe a number of his friends in the House of Parliament, they're not interested in getting the views. If you even ask, give us a reporting of what you got in those 10 counties. What were the Kenyans in those 10 counties saying about this bill? When they are debating it, I never had any of those people ventilate the opinions of those Kenyans at that time of the public participation. So in the end, the public participation was just like a formality actually to meet that kind of a requirement the court pronounced about it, that it needed that it has the people's opinion. And the people's opinion cannot be on only 10 counties. We have 47 counties.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Apart from the issue of public participation, because that was one thing that the three-judge bench ruled in November 2023.
Correct.
The other thing was that, as it was at that particular time, the decision to only charge or deduct 1.5% from salaried Kenyans was unfair and discriminatory.
Yes.
Why? Because those in the informal sector were going to benefit from this particular program, even though they did not contribute.
Correct.
Now, as it is at the moment, after amendments by on the bill proposed by one Kimani Ichung'wah, the majority leader and member for Kikuyu.
Kikuyu, correct.
Kenyans with income. That means even non-salaried Kenyans.
Correct.
Will now have to contribute.
Correct.
What is your opinion on that, Mr. Callistus Wafula, to begin with?
Now, just like my friend has told you, you cannot do public participation in private, because if they were interested in doing public participation, then they need to do it in a structured way. Media should have to be invited.
Yes, the media was invited.
But it wasn't adequate, because you can organize some people somewhere to come to a meeting, then after a meeting you say you have done public participation. Public participation, you need to collect opinions from the people. I think the way they conducted it, it was just planned to call the way it is going.
Okay, question is, let me just ask you a question. Did you attend the public participation here in Nairobi, the Kenyatta International Convention Center, because it happened on 2 consecutive days?
I wasn't in Nairobi, but I can prove to you that that wasn't public participation.
How?
Because if I could be there, I don't think I could have gotten time to access even the mic. That one I'm sure 100%. Someone might organize people.
Someone might argue that is an assumption because you are not there.
No, there are some people who are there. They are my friends, and I followed up the meeting. What we are trying to say here is that the government has planned things. The president wants the housing project to go on, and the members of parliament have decided, and most of them who are just his friends, have decided to support this project blindly. And we are saying the reason why some of the MPs walked out during that debate, most of them were just opposition leaders. So we are telling Kenyans, this is the right time to now start looking at our mistakes, because normally when it comes to election, we make mistakes by electing somebody and we give him majority. There is no business of you voting for William Ruto and giving him majority members, or voting for all the ships that are following him. That is the biggest mistake ever. Even if it will be Kalonzo Musyoka will be the next president, we don't have to support Kalonzo Musyoka plus all the people that are around with him. So we are saying the best practice of democracy. Even you look at the United States, Joe Biden was elected, but when you look at how now the composition of the Congress House, you realize that that is the democracy that they wanted, because the Republican had almost majority. So we are telling Kenyans, the president is making unilateral decision because he has power to do. And about these housing projects, housing issues is not our main problem in Kenya. They are discussing about the performance of economy. Kenyan economy is doing so bad. And in fact, what we are witnessing is structured bond, which is being now released in the market. That is what has weakened the US dollar. And it's not the performance of economy. William Ruto is saying, is promising Kenyans, now we are doing good, we have reduced, but all of a sudden, the dollar will shoot be above 200.
Before we talk about the dollar, I'll go back to my question.
Yes.
The issue of non-salaried Kenyans now contributing to the affordable housing project.
That is another problem. So how are they going to force somebody to contribute? Because the salaried one, you can slash their salary. In my private capacity, how can I just work in an office and pay? That is non-sustainable. They will not sustain that collection. Non-salaried will not pay. Even if they use force, they won't get money from non-salaried. What they have done is they want to justify that now this thing is not discriminative, but it is discriminative. Those who are employed, you are slashing their salary. In fact, they are reducing their salary. And I'm wondering why Atwoli is quiet, because I have never seen any president reducing salary. William Ruto is the first president on earth to slash people's salary or to tax salary. You are not supposed to tax salary. When we say these things are unconstitutional, we have to look around and see which country is doing what we are doing. There's no successful country that is doing what Kenya is doing now. And we are saying the worst mistake is selling public land, trying to convert public land to be private land, to be privately owned. So in future, if the state want to do anything, it wouldn't be possible, because you can't demolish houses that are owned privately. You can't demolish a private property, but the government can change use of any public utility.
Mr. Massey, now I want to get your point of view, because just before I ask you my question, do you support the housing program?
At the moment, no. With these reasons. Now, if I go back to your earlier question about Now it has been floated on the floor of the House, and then now they are debating it. Now there's another element of now, that's the levy now applying to even non-salaried Kenyans. Now the question is, if we go back to the three-bench pronouncement. The pronouncement was very clear that you need to come up with a comprehensive legal framework that will be able to guide how this housing levy and the entire program will be carried. And in that ruling, the judges they weren't very economical. They were very generous in terms of how they wanted it to be done. Right now, we are hurried. The members of parliament on the floor, they are just hurried without actually coming up with those tenets, the legal tenets. For instance, how is the land to be acquired? Part of this land, this initiative is a national government initiative. But don't you see that these houses are being built in the counties? Part of that land that is being earmarked for this project belongs to the counties. Of course, we know the custodian of our land in this country is the National Land Commission. Well, but there's the counties, they own that land. So if you initiate a national government project on a county land, now where does it fall? Who manages it and how does it operate? Number two, if the houses will be done, despite even the modality of mobilizing the resources now, how does it happen? Like you go, an example like in Singapore, they had such an initiative of the housing plan. And one of the things is when this house is done and the house is handed over to somebody, they tell him, you will not rent even this house. If you will not occupy this house, and then you will not have to rent it in the next 5 years. Meaning the house is meant to address that issue of homelessness and lack of shelters and all that for the community, for the people. If we go back, there was a housing project done during the Mwai Kibaki era, that is like here in Kibra. You could get somebody who was assigned a house, a unit, one-bedroom unit. But shortly, they could only be there for 2 months. They leave, now they rent it. So they get that income for their maybe an affordable, maybe place elsewhere. So the thing is, the comprehensive legal framework that will guide this project is what we are lacking. And nobody doesn't want even to listen to it. Now, if you look at even the mobilization of the resources now, initially it was the salaried. Right now it wants to appear like it is capturing everybody so that we can appear like we've addressed that issue of it not looking discriminatory. But again, how does somebody without a job, without a salary, be able to fund?
That is, of course, that is one of the biggest loopholes, because if at all you know how to take a portion or deduct 1.5% from someone who's not salaried.
Correct.
Someone who is an artisan in the Juakari sector. How do you now calculate? How do you know the income they get on monthly
basis? That is another big challenge.
Business, and how do you know you've taken 1.5%? That is one of the discrepancies that was not addressed. But in terms of the legal framework, because the three-judge bench said the affordable housing program did not adhere to section 10, 206, 207, and 210 of the Kenyan Constitution. Some of those issues have been addressed, but some were not addressed, including that of setting out the measures of collecting that particular 1.5% from non-salaried Kenyans. Again, who is the custodian of the fund in itself, the housing fund?
It's not even yet, it isn't even clear. And they will not, if you ask them, they weren't very clear about this. All we are saying is, this was part of the agenda of the president by then when he was in the campaign trail. So in so doing, he is very much determined to have these resources that they will be translated into the project. But as you put it, already that is a loophole. And this is a litigant nation right now. that is red meat already for the litigants. Once it is out of the flow of the parliament, litigants are already in court. Again we'll go back. And that's why I said initially, the problem with this country, we do not learn from experience. We'll continue making the same mistakes and we'll continue wasting the same time. And that is how is a simple, the simplest way or a characteristic of a country that is disorganized. Okay. Yeah, a country that is disorganized in itself, you look at how they waste time, how they don't learn from experiences, how they would appear like they are out of time when they want to achieve something, but they do not want to achieve it correctly. The best thing was the housing initiative isn't a bad idea. It is a good idea. But if everything is done correctly, it involves the people, and actually, at the end of the day, somebody can see its viability. Not now, but in the long run as well.
One would argue, the opposition has been vocal in regards to opposing this particular housing bill.
Correct.
The one that was not tabled by Kimani Ichung'wah. But if you are opposing the bill and then you storm out of the sessions that is debating, now, how are you providing a solution or an alternative to Kenyans? Because it is a responsibility. Not only the opposition, because we've also seen, legislators allied to the government. An example is Githunguri Member of Parliament, Gathene Mushomba, who's constantly raised concerns about this particular program. So, safe to say as well, the opposition has failed in keeping the government in check, because if they cannot counter, then storming out cannot be an option, really.
Well, what we expected was that, what was the also alternative look of the whole thing? Well, they may have their own proposition on how the housing bill and the housing program can be approached. But the other thing is, when you fail to appear, when you fail to make your arguments on that floor to those ones who are the proposers of the whole thing, you don't make your arguments against the counterpoints to their plan, then it simply means definitely you have nothing actually to do about it. So by staying away, failing to appear on the floor, it simply sends a signal of people who like they are crying a lot in the public eye, but actually they are doing nothing. The same, to address the same. So the politics we have, as I'll agree with my friend Callistus, is that the politics we have, I don't know, with the public is manipulated in a way to believe something is happening, or some people are making an effort to address a certain issue when actually there is nothing at all happening.
Well,
yeah.
Away from that,
yes.
Let's talk matters, the Kenyan economy.
Correct.
The president yesterday, I don't want to call it a State of the Nation address. Not really. It wasn't really a State of the Nation address, but it was addressing the nation in regards to matters of the Kenyan economy. Of course, he was flanked by his deputy and the PS and CS for National Treasury. He says Kenya is out of, debt distress. Is out of the list of the countries that, are under debt distress. Again, the National Treasury says 98% of the country's revenue goes to paying debts. So if 98% goes to paying debt, 90% of our revenue, and on the other hand, we are saying we are out of the debt distress. Mr. Callistus.
I think what the president is trying to say is trying to pay so that he can borrow more. And that is not an explanation of the performance of the economy. An economy is defined on the basis of consumption of goods and services and the supply of money. Now we cannot say Kenyan economy is growing because we are now sustaining or we are paying debts. Debts we are supposed to pay, and it's not something that we can celebrate. We can't celebrate paying debts. Because I know the president is borrowing more than Uhuru Kenyatta used to borrow. We are saying the performance of Kenyan economy, if the focus of the whole country is focusing on housing as if is our national problem, people people own houses, private developers are doing good units per year. There are so many houses going on, housing programs by private individuals doing them. So the president taking up issues of housing, it means actually it explains how we don't take our priorities right, because the president is focusing on something which is not a problem. He's trying to solve a problem which is not there. He's supposed to be focusing on how can we increase production, how can we increase manufacturing of goods, how can we bring more investors in the country. The issue of housing, overtaxing people, taking money from the people, cannot be explained to be a development. And that is the reason why we are saying, even as we discuss housing issues, housing levy, housing program, we also need to look at our economy. What is killing our economy? Our economy is being killed by overtaxation, retrogressive tax system, and also total disregard of the government to align resources in the right way. Because there are so many industries in the country which are stalled because of lack of resources. Others have stalled because of mismanagement. The president never discussed such kind of things. We have seen him all over the country. He is campaigning. He's trying to explain what he is doing. Kachakwa is there. He's saying the president has plans. All those plans they are discussing on private, on roadside, on street, they are supposed to implement. And we are saying Kenyan parliament is a dysfunctional parliament. This is a parliament that cannot help us do anything. That's why most of us have decided that whenever we are confronted with that kind of issues, the only place we can go is a court of law. But when you look at how now Martha Koome is behaving, it's like judiciary has become like a civil society. They are also fighting for their rights. So I don't know how it will end, but we are in a situation that only God knows, because judiciary is being weakened. They are denying judiciary resources. At the same time, the parliament, the executive is on high gear to implement illegal things. This housing program is illegal. They are also selling public land to be owned privately. And we are asking, if these members of parliament, they pass that bill, they want houses to be constructed. If someone asks them, where are those houses being constructed? Who is the owner of that title? Is it Kenyan government? And if it is Kenyan government, how can you now lie to me that this will be your house forever? Because if it is my house, it should be owned by me. In case I pass away, my children should be able to own.
Away from the issue of housing, because we've actually really touched on that. Coming to you, Mr. Massey. Yes. Recently, in the past couple of weeks, we've seen the shilling sort of stabilizing, you'd say, or appreciating from 160 compared to the dollar to around 140 at the moment. Do we credit the government for that, or is just the Kenyan shilling naturally aligning to the global market?
Now, before even I go there, let me go back to the previous question about the annual National Executive Retreat that concluded yesterday in Naivasha. Now, when you listen to the president, he gives a tone of things are now looking better. We must have, we appear like we are out of the woods. But I don't think whoever was giving him that kind of reporting had the best indicators of what a country looks like when it has turned a corner from an economic mess. Let me tell you, my friend, if you even go on the streets outside here, you definitely know if an economy is doing well or not doing well. If you bought a border, even if you don't know that guy, the border man, the moment he initiates the conversation is all about things aren't well. If you go to a grocery, a green grocery, anywhere you want to buy a fruit or anything, the only conversation that you'll have with that mama in that grocery stall will be things are not well, we can't get the fruits on the market, they are expensive and all other things. So I don't think whoever was trying to give the report to the president, even if it's a report generated from the Treasury Department, that report may not be that honest. We are not yet out of the woods. In fact, we are now moving deeper into the woods.
How?
2022, September, when the president was actually being inaugurated, the national debt was about 8 to about 9 trillion. Right now, the national debt stands at around 11.3 trillion. Now, what does that tell you? Yeah? Our GDP is about 15 to 16 trillion. So 11 out of 15 trillion, that is over 67%. Meaning debt is 67% of our GDP. And the international recommendations or guidance is that the national debt should not surpass 50%. That is the agreement. So if you are already 67% of our GDP, what does it tell us? It tells us we are in more trouble than ever. And so if we don't have any good strategic remedial programs to address this, then we are in total shit. One is that whenever they say, if we are doing well in repayment of debt, that is okay. Reducing debt is one of the things. But actually, basically, if you look at the Kenyan debt, is it reducing? If we are at around 9, when President Uhuru was living, and then now we are at 11.3. And by end of this financial year, because we are in the third quarter of this 2023-2024, by the close of this financial year, then we could be at around 11.6. What does that mean? Are we reducing the debt? We are not. Right now, the greatest expenditure, it's true, the greatest expenditure of the government is debt, repayment of debt, and it is interest over 850 billion out of maybe a budget of about 3.6 trillion annually. So that does mean, what does it mean? If we are paying all that share to debt in terms of interest and all that, how much does it leave us for development? Our constitution, 2010 constitution, is very clear that development should take up to 35% of our budget. The last financial year, 2022-2023, the national government managed only 17% going into development. And that 17% is the one that needs to grow the economy and to expand opportunities, employment, entrepreneurship, production, agriculture, energy, and all that. County governments managed 24%, way below 35%. So it does mean an economy to do well, we could be talking of, we've even gone beyond the 35% mark. We are doing at 43% nationally, and at county levels we are doing at 47 averagely for all the 47 counties. Then you will definitely see, you feel it. An economy that is doing well, you don't need even to tell people how it is doing. You will just feel it.
One would argue, though, that the argument that you're saying, that if you go to a boda guy or a grocery shop, they'd argue that things are not going so well. That has been the case for some time.
Correct.
But with the Kenyan shilling appreciating, things are likely to get better.
But I want also to ask you back, for how long? This is a temporary reprieve. Right now, what has happened, Calista, I think alluded about it earlier, Kenya has gone into buyback the Eurobond of 2014. And the reason why we are buying it back, its maturity is in June.
24th of June,
24th of June this year. The reason why we are going to the market again to buy it back is because we want another facility. We are going for another facility. Yeah? And if you look at the dynamics right now at the financial markets, is the one Kenya is going for is I think in the continent we have Ivory Coast has gone for it. Benin is also a country that has also gone for another one. But if you look at their interest, it's a bit lower than ours. Ours is about 18, theirs is about 9.7% and all that. And the reason why Kenya is going for, Kenya has been given that 18% is because we are a great at risk. We don't know if we will be able to repay. But again, the reason why we are how do you go take a loan that is with a very big interest? The reason why you usually take a loan that has a very big interest rate is because you are desperate. Right now we are in a very desperate situation. We want money to resource our budget. Rather, the budget, I think, is the budget policy statement is estimated to be around over 4 trillion. How we're going to resource it. But so the thing is, before that, we had what you call the infrastructure bonds that has been floated in the market recently. And the president himself said some weeks back, I think he said things are likely to be better. So it's like that was an insider. You know, the financial markets, the way even stocks trade across the world, politicians make big, whenever a politician makes a statement, it affects. That's why even the president of the United States, when he makes a statement, you will hear stocks have fallen or stocks have appreciated. Why? Either it will send jitters or it will be able to bolster confidence in investors and all that. So when the president said we're going to do something with our infrastructure bond, that is from the Minister of Treasury, that is CS Njuguna Ndung'u, most of the investors liquidated their dollars into the market. So there is more dollar inflow in the market right now. That's why you can be able to see that drop from 160 and right now like we are in 146 and all that. But it may not, it is likely to be short-lived. It's temporary reprieve. Shortly after that, and again, the reason why I'm saying it may not really last for long, the financial market at the global stage, again, is very volatile right now. UK is almost in a recession. They're just tethering closer to a recession. The United States, the inflation is through the roof. Yeah? And right now, coupled with the conflicts in the Middle East and then in the Far East Europe, complicates everything. So it might not be something that will be able actually to relieve Kenyan, for sure. The most maybe surest way we could do it is, can we be able to, how do we increase the inflow of dollars? The direct investment, foreign investment has reduced. That's one thing the government should be looking at. How do we increase the direct foreign investment? How do we bolster tourism so that more dollar can come through? Yeah. How do we improve the remittance for Kenyans who are working overseas so that they can be able to release more of their money here? That can be the only way, surest way actually to sustain us through. But this short reprieve by the infrastructure bond that was floated in the market recently, I don't think it will be able to do us a lot.
To you, Mr. Callistus Ofula, you touched on the judiciary. Safe to say Mother Koome is crying, because yesterday she said she decried of, interference from the national government, disregard of court orders, and inadequate funding. Now, what is the judiciary staring at? Because if at all we are having a backlog of cases, because Koome says we are dealing with cases on priority basis, then it means in one way or two, in a way or two, then we could not be addressing the issues at hand, because if the judiciary cannot operate as they should, then it is another crisis that we have in the country.
Yes. When we say we have got a dysfunctional government, such a kind of things happens, because now what Martha Koome is saying is that they have been denied the resources, and the executive is the executive want to frustrate their operations. And now that is a message for all Kenyans to know. We need to raise up and defend the judiciary, because it's from judiciary is when we can get justice. It's from judiciary is when all of us can get our rights addressed. So, Martha Koome, if a country, if executive can be allowed to frustrate the judiciary, then know that they can be able to do anything. So all things that we are talking about, including all these housing levies, the president, he wants to achieve his his manifesto, as he promised Kenyans. We don't have a problem with it. But the issue of frustrating judiciary, it doesn't show a good picture. It shows that he is out to manipulate the system and maybe do something that he can benefit either himself or his government, his administration. So the point we are saying, the members of parliament, now that we have got a dysfunction of parliament, because majority of members are aligned to William Ruto. So we are saying, going into the future, in the next election, some of us, we need to also look at ourselves, look at how many political parties do we have in the country, how many people to contest in all these political parties. So if you can be able to make or to elect wisely, in the future we won't face such kind of things. A president doesn't need to have majority in parliament, because if you manipulate parliament, you can be able to manipulate anything. If they are passing this house levy without the input of opposition, then it means the country is fully in the hands of KK, Kenya Kwanza regime. So we are asking Kenyans to vote wisely, and we have to defend the judiciary, because judiciary, I don't expect parliament to defend the judiciary. In fact, Kenyan parliament is a house where all the things, all the wrong things that are being happening, they are being orchestrated in that house. So we are saying, if judiciary has been the issue, or the something that is stopping them to implement all things, including corruptions, so we cannot expect either executive or parliament to defend the judiciary. This is a space where we are missing the right civil societies, Kenyans of goodwill, who can stand up and defend the country and defend the constitution, defend the rule of law, and defend the judiciary. That is where we can get justice. If Kenyans will continue sleeping and clapping on the people who are serving them, I saw them walking around every time they are preaching. They are preaching in church. And our churches, and I want to ask this morning, there are so many church leaders who participated in the last campaign, general election. They campaigned for certain people, and those people won elections. We want to know. Those church leaders should also tell us what did they achieve, because the same people that are still preaching in the churches, and yet things are not working. When we say economy is so bad, we are doing bad. It is the way Nani Evans has explained. You cannot float bonds in the market. You reduce the demand of dollar. Then, after the shilling appreciates, then you come confirm to the people that we are doing well economically. Well, what the president ought to have told the Kenyans, this is what I've done to improve economy. That one is not telling us, but he's telling us we are doing well. Well, you cannot take credit on anything, even passing fly, you are taking credit, because...
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Coming to you, Mr. Massey. Yes. Chief Justice Martha Koome talks about acute funding. They requested for 43 billion shillings. They got 23 billion shillings. Yeah. Now, she says that has affected, its operations. But from where you sit, what is the biggest problem? And what is the root cause of the tussle between, the three arms of government? Because clearly there are, arms of government but that are, at war, beg your pardon.
One, it is very unfortunate. I sympathize with the Chief Justice, being the president of the judiciary, for what she was trying to let the Kenyans know and what is really happening. One thing that is very clear is judiciary is independent from executive. Executive is independent from parliament or the legislature. These are three arms of government. They work independently. though they must also work, we must also appreciate that they need to work harmoniously. When the president was assuming power, one of the things he unequivocally promised on the campaign trail was, when I get there in State House, I'll be able to work with the judiciary more harmoniously.
Yes.
I want them to enjoy the independence. I want them to be well-resourced. I'll not interfere. The executive will not interfere, or I'll, again, also be on the watch to ensure that any other organ of government doesn't interfere with their work. Yeah, and even you saw it, day 2, the first day of the president in office, he witnessed the swearing in of the number of judges who have been
President
Kenyatta, had declined to appoint. That was a step actually to walk his talk, that actually this is what I'm to do. Later on, he even went ahead and said, your budget is likely actually to be increased so that you can be able to undertake your operations well. But along the way, shortly after this, some of these rulings and pronouncements of the courts over issues where the government hasn't correctly maybe undertaken the procedure, followed the law as it is, now the executive appears to be at a collision course with the judiciary. And now that one now has trickled down into even to appear like the treasury, which is a part, an element of the executive, cannot actually be able to remit the necessary resources to the judiciary. The resources the judiciary needs do not belong to the executive. The resources are Kenyan resources, taxpayers' resources. And if actually the budget policy, which is a Kenyan document, stipulates that judiciary should get this 40 billion of this amount of money, it should get. Nobody should actually be able to say the judiciary, nobody has any power to stop that happening. The resources are Kenyan money, and even the item to within the budget that stipulates that this amount of resources should go to the judiciary, it has been generated by the Kenyan people.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Because of time, I just, as you wrap up, a couple of minutes each, starting with you, Mr. Kalista Zafula. Raila Odinga said he'll be gunning for the AUC, chairperson seat, seeking to succeed Musa Faki Mahamat. But we're looking at a scenario that rumor has it that former President Uhuru Kenyatta might as well want to go for that seat. Now, as we wrap up, one, are we looking at a situation where the country will front 2 candidates? And what does that mean for us? Does it, scuttle the probability of, a Kenyan, ascending to the AUC chairperson's seat? And if at all Odinga wins, what does it mean for, the local political scene in terms of, opposition politics? In 2 minutes, kindly.
First of all, let me tell you that I'm sure 100% Uhuru Kenyatta can't go for that position. And Raila Odinga, if Raila Odinga will go for that position, that will mean the country will now be in good position to do politics that will yield fruits. Because for me, I know, I'm 100% sure, if Raila is not running, it will be easy for us to remove William Ruto on power. Because there are few people who can defeat William Ruto. And among those few people, the name of Raila Odinga tops that list. So we are saying, if he go for that seat, then it will be easy for us to organize a team that will bring William Ruto down. Uhuru Kenyatta can't go for that seat. That seat is too small for him. And he can't go there, waste time. Because Raila Odinga is retiring, and there is not guaranteed that when he runs, he will win. It is better he go for that position. It is a good advice he go for that position, and let him allow Kenyans to plan now how they will replace William Ruto. We don't want somebody to say now Kalonzo Musyoka will pick off. No. We got to pick somebody like Matiang'i or anybody, be it Martha Karua. We found her on the ballot with William Ruto. William Ruto will have gone home because what we need now is to give Kenyan reasons not to elect the current regime.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I don't know from where you sit, because the sentiments of Mr. Kalista's of one might say controversial, because some quarters in the country do say if Raila Odinga exits the local political scene, then it's a leeway for President William Ruto heading into the 2027 general elections. What is your take on that?
Correct. I'll begin from saying this.
A couple of minutes.
As I've said, Kenyans' experience, learning from experience is very interesting. In 2018, a Kenyan was a contender in Amina Mohamed for that very seat against Musa Faki. We lost. And some of the reasons we lost at that time, because the political climate in the country at that time, we appeared like we are not in one silo to lobby support behind or to rally behind Amina Mohamed, and she lost. So this is another opportunity now for Kenyans in Raila Odinga to be the AU chair. Now, of course, there will be other dynamics, because he also requires that he needs support. And the Kenyan government is actually the #1 supporter for Raila Odinga. Sooner than later, you are going to see shuttle diplomacy by the CS Foreign Affairs moving across African countries to lobby support for the same, actually. So President William Ruto will play a very critical role in a Kenyan being the chair of the AU Commission. So President Ruto, in Raila Odinga being an AU chair commission, President Ruto becomes the earliest or the first beneficiary of that arrangement, because Raila Odinga's politics, Raila Odinga has been a figure in the Kenyan politics for over 25 years, if I'm not much wrong, seriously, or over 30, even beyond that. So by Raila Odinga being out of picture, actually, as Kalistas puts it, the level, the political dynamics will have completely shifted. And so his exit might mean other things, actually.
Yes.
Shift in the political architecture of our country. And as you look at things right now, it requires that those ones who've been with Raila Odinga, like in Azimio, they need to reposition themselves to see who becomes what and becomes what. A week ago, before even the announcement came, Raila Odinga was doing his own trips and he was in the coast. And if you could feel what was actually, it's like they had an inside information of what actually was on the horizon. And so that's why you saw even people like Joho, they're saying, we are ready to take up the mantle and lead ODM and lead Azimio. Oparanya, speaking the same language. In the other day now, when you saw the press conference with Azimio leaders again, Kioni, Karua, Kalonzo, they're saying we are ready to be able actually to take up. The Raila Odinga shadow has been a big one in the political picture of Kenya.
So just a yes or a no, Mr. Mmasi.
Yes.
If Raila exits the local political scene,
correct,
do the likes of Kalonzo, Martha Karua, Alias and Joho, Wycliffe Ambetsa Oparanya stand a chance of unseating President William Ruto in 2027? Yes or no?
It is not automatic. They need to reposition strategically.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this particular morning here on the Morning Drift. That was the conversation surrounding the state of the nation as it is at the moment. We are taking a short break. We'll be back with matters, the economy of the country, the Eurobond debate and the appreciating shilling or the depreciating dollar debate. Don't go away.
Tuko hapa Kaptara, tunataka kusema asante sana RUTO Foundation kwa mambo mazuri ambayo wameweza kutufanyia leo. Wakaaji wa hapa Kaptara, wakaaji wa hapa Salawa, wakaaji wa hapa Mujukuo, mpaka wakaaji wote ambao wanatoka hapa Baringo County.
Naambia RUTO Foundation asante kwa kazi nzuri wanayofanya. Mungu awabariki.
Every time you play Lotto, 25% goes to the Lotto Foundation, which supports our fellow Kenyans through various causes. Thank you for your help. Together, we are changing lives.
Lookuptv welcomes you to attend the first career fair themed The Place of Education and Technical Skills in a Digitally Disruptive Era. The event will be streamed live on our TV and digital platforms. There will be a battery of professional speakers from diverse career disciplines. Join us for an opportunity to sharpen your career choices and make informed decisions for the future at the University of Nairobi Towers on the 22nd of February as from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Don't miss out.
Are you an SME looking for a media partner? Look no more, as Lookuptv got you covered for all your visibility and marketing needs. We at Lookuptv understand your business needs and want to work with you on your marketing journey, giving you solutions that will take you to the next level. Call us today on 0707 572 358 or send an email to sales@lookuptv.co.ke and kickstart this amazing journey. Welcome to Lookuptv, your official SME media partner.
Tere, mambo ni mawili, kufikisha, kumwaga na kurudi. Kulala ni mwaka mpya.
Bua muka we mse. Nini mbaya? Wewe kwani wani vile dereva anaendesha gari vibaya, lazima tususe. Anaendesha gari na kwa simu the whole time hata angalia barabara. Simame. Wewe dereva wewe. Mwaka iliyopita peke yake watu zaidi ya 3,000 walipoteza maisha yao barabarani kwa sababu ya tabia kama hizo. Hautatuangamiza tukiona.
Naomba msamaha, nitampeleka vizuri.
Si wameomba msamaha. Sasa twende tusafiri kwa mwendo wa aste.
Dairy Smart hufikisha abiria salama. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwako na NTSA kwa ushirikiano na European Union.
Well, thank you very much for staying with us. This is the Morning Drift, and we're just about to talk about matters of the Kenyan economy. And this particular morning, I'm joined by Mr. Delvin Igashira. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us this particular morning.
Thank you.
I mean, it has been a week where, we've seen the fluctuating of, the Kenyan shilling against the dollar. First of all, I'd want to know from where you sit, what do you make of the situation as it is when we talk about, the shilling against the dollar?
Basically, the dollar is one of the strongest currency in the world. In fact, it is the strongest currency in the world, and all the transactions are normally pegged on dollar. So any dollar movement globally will tend to affect any other currency. And unfortunately or fortunately, we're in the emerging markets, so we get one of the highest hits, considering that everything that we have in the country is priced against the dollar, be it the export imports, be it the debt, be it the global transaction which pass through the Kenyan economy. So at the end of the day, we have to have a transaction, and it has to be pegged with the dollar. Even if you're doing any other currency transaction, be it the non-known currencies, Malaysian currency, or you're transacting with the Chinese currency, most of the time the pricing of this currency is based on the dollar. So any dollar movement will affect the Kenya shillings. So that is what how the dollar will definitely affect the shilling.
Some quarters say that this includes the cabinet secretary, that is one Moses Kuria. Would you attribute the sort of appreciating of the Kenyan shilling to efforts put in by the government? Do we credit the government for that?
I can say yes and no. Remember in 2022, there was a time when the shilling started depreciating around 2022 and the beginning of 2023. The war in Ukraine had a very big effect because of the global transaction. There was a slowdown in import and exports in Kenya, and we were not able to push much goods into the economy. So it started around that time. Now, what happened is that when 2023 came in, one of the things that came to the limelight was the ability of the government to sell domestic debt in terms to manage the global the foreign debt, the ability of the government to get foreign debt which comes in dollars, which help very much in stabilizing the dollars. That particular relationship plays a very big role in which direction the shillings would move. So in March last year, one of the credit rating companies declared Kenya not being able to create enough liquidity, both domestically and internationally. The second thing is that the Eurobond that is maturing in 2024 came into play a big factor, because we were paying out $2 billion, which is a very big part of our reserves. So that particular element, that rating, created a kind of panic in the economy and the international market. So what happens is that majority of traders, majority of partners, majority of international players will tend to exclude the particular country that has been red flags. And remember, most of these international investors look very highly at those global rating companies. So the moment that announcement came in, we started seeing a little bit of jostling in terms of how much investment can come in Kenya. So around that time, a second thing that happened is that the government was issuing long-term debt, long-term domestic debt. This is the bonds. It was issuing 10 to 15 to 20-year bonds. And that, in 2022, liquidity was good. Remember, we were coming from COVID, there was a change in regulations, there was a change in monetary policy, so there was a little bit of money pumped into the economy. So that had been already mopped up. So in 2023, there was a need for a change in strategy from the long-term bonds to the short-term bonds. So that introduction of long-term bonds, most investors were not interested in them, so they did not purchase. So when the global rating company stated that there was tight liquidity in the market, it was not about the liquidity, it was about what was being offered in the market. So the government changed track, and it went to short-term bonds, 2 years to 5 years. And in fact, the first infrastructure bond they issued was about a 6.5-year bond. It was oversubscribed, meaning that there is enough liquidity in the market. The second point that played a lot with that and the lack of dollar in the country was the factor about the Eurobond. Everybody was not sure if Kenya was going to pay the Eurobond. It was stated we don't have liquidity. If you looked at our export external debt ratio was not very good, and remember, we need the export so that we bring in dollars to make the payments. When you look at the international market at that time, it was very expensive to issue a Eurobond, and that's why I said in 2022 they tried. They were getting the rates of 12% on that. It was very expensive. So we were not able to go into the international market. So all that has changed over time. So one thing we noticed that Ivory Coast was in the market. I think they made the announcement mid-January about the success on the Eurobond. It was oversubscribed. And that is the time when the government realized that there is a potential in the Eurobond market. So to get into the market, they had to convince investors, number one, that they are able to make the repayment on that front. Another thing that played a very big important role is that I know we normally make fun of our president flying in and out of the country, but if you look at it, he's been establishing relationship, and one of the biggest relationship he's been able to solidify is with our multilateral and bilateral lenders, the IMF, the World Banks, the African Development Bank, and that trust has enabled funds to flow into the country. And remember that in January, IMF committed $941 million, and immediately they released about $650 million. So that confidence alone was able to show that we are able to be trusted by other players. So around that time is when the government, again, with the confidence of the Ivory Coast Eurobond, they changed tact. Instead of going for commercial loans, they decided to go for the concessionary loans, which are cheaper and they give you better terms. So that information was guided by the availability of the IMF funding, the strategy by Ivory Coast, and that information is what guided the Kenyan government to decide to go for the Eurobond to make a repayment for the Eurobond. So the moment they announced they were not going for the one-on-one with commercial banks, they were moving to the Eurobond market, everything started to play. So we had enough dollars flowing into the country. We had confidence about the Eurobond, and then the buyback came in. Nobody believed that the buyback was going to happen.
Talking about the buyback, to a layman, what does it mean? Because it is the 2014 Eurobond, the $2 billion, and the paying of the $1.5 billion. What to a layman, what does that mean? And what impact will it have on the Kenyan economy?
So basically, a buyback is you get a loan and you have a term. So maybe, for example, 10 years. So you're supposed to pay the loan after 10 years. So when it gets towards the maturity period of time, you start thinking, do I need to make the repayment of the loan or do I restructure the loan? So the structuring of the loan comes in two ways. You either renegotiate with the holders of the loan that they extend the time with the new terms, or you get money, purchase the loan from the owners of the loan. That means you pay them back, and then you get another loan from either the same players or different players. So that is basically buyback. Now the ability of Kenya, and remember that we had received some money for budgetary support from the IMF, the ability of Kenya to renegotiate that loan, the ability of Kenya to go into the market and being able to have better terms than they were getting in 2012, they had confidence that they can buy back the loan early and then get another Eurobond. So that single element showed the confidence to investors that we are able to pay back their debt. So we can bring in the government as a big player in terms of trying to control the shilling.
Talking about the debt that we have as a country, I just wanted to pick your mind, because on the local dailies today, they're talking about the government using 98% of the local revenue, to service debts. Where does this, leave us? Because if we are using 98% of our local revenue to service the debts that we have, then where does it leave us as a country?
Okay, so the way the debts are repaid is that there's like any other debt, there's a schedule on when they have to make big payments and when they have to make the small payments. So mostly between December and January, and then I believe should be June and July, there is normally a heavy payout. And that is a time when we have to use a lot of our revenue to make the payments out. But when you look at it in the December, it was the normal flow of about 60% revenue payment to debt. And you'll also see that in the month of February, that ratio will go down. So it's all about the timing of the payment. So you have the revenue, yes, but on that particular moment, you have a bulky payment that you have to do. And unfortunately, the ability to pay that shows the confidence that you can be able to get additional lending. So it's very important for the government to ensure that it always pay out its debt. So the 98%, we can say it's just a blip and it will normalize.
Now, talking about the shilling appreciating, can that particular gain be sustained, or is it just a short-term thing, temporary for that case?
Okay, that's a very good question. When you look at the overall economic the scenario that happened in the last 1 month, 2 months, And remember, the government had already hinted. The CS Treasury had said we are buying back the debt. The CS Treasury had said that we are going to pay, we will be able to pay the debt, the Eurobond that is coming up. So those are somehow hints that the government was providing for us. Now, when they announced the buyback, two things happened. There's a little bit of dollars that, you know, that just that information that we are buying it back means that there will be liquidity change, meaning that there will be more money flowing into the economy, and in terms of dollars. So those people who are holding those Eurobond in dollars will be paid money. That means there will be an overflow of dollars into the market. So that was one of the key elements. Number two is that the ability of the government to get another Eurobond gave the international market an indicator that the shilling slide might not be continuous. It is going to slow down. And then number three, and this is one of the things that the retail clients need to note, is that between December 2022 and December 2023, the commercial bank dollar reserves increased by 66%, meaning that you and I were holding dollars into the banks so that we take advantage of the currency, the dollar appreciation and the shilling depreciation. So that created a panic in the market. So everybody wanted out. And we know that when there is a panic in the market, you and I will be willing to cut losses at any particular point. So everybody flooded into the market to sell their dollars. I know there were pictures about people being outside some of the banks to sell their dollars, but it was not like that. Most of these transactions are normally online. So there was a flood of panic into people selling the dollars. And any business person, when they see that, they tend to take advantage of that, and they can be able to price it the way they feel like. So what happened is that panic created the artificial, I don't want to say artificial, but the drop in terms of the currency value. And again, CBK was very open in the market, saying that we believe that the currency should be going down. The only difference is that drop should not have been like that fast. For example, the whole of 2023, on average, it was a 2% depreciation per month. 2% depreciation per month. In the month of December, it's about 2.1% depreciation. In January, if you look at the whole of January, we had a 2.4% depreciation. Between the mentioning of the buyback, let me just say, when Ivory Coast got the bond, the depreciation started slowing down. When the government announced, that is on 30th January, that they're doing the buyback, it went flat. On 31st, when it started happening and the president came out and said that we are doing the buyback, that shilling dropped by 11%. And this is between 31st December and 21st February. So that 11% depreciation covered more than, what I can say, half of the depreciation that happened the whole of 2023. So that sharp decline is what that is not supposed to be. It should be gradual. If it's a 2% appreciation, then that's okay. But that drastic is what creates the panic. And that is the reason why the government now, through central bank, had to come into the market and try to normalize that particular depreciation.
Now, from an economic policy perspective, what can the government do, in regards to trying to sustain the recovery of the Kenya shilling?
Oh, okay. One of the big players about stability of the currency is the ability to bring in the foreign currency in the country. So it's to create a bigger effort in trying to expand our exports. Export is key. The second part is to bring in foreign investors into the country. Remember, when foreign investors come in, they invest in dollars. So that means it's an inflow into the country. So creating an environment that is very good for investments can play a very big role in stabilizing this country. Remember that when they come into the country, whichever direction will happen is that when we expand manufacturing, when we expand the economy, a few things will happen. Number one, we'll create employment, we'll expand our exports, we will tend to use a little bit of more of the raw materials, which again will reduce on the imports. So that will be able to play a very big role. Number 3 is to try and reduce what we call consumable imports. Consumable imports is the things that we import but we can manufacture locally. So if we create those industries in the local economy, we can reduce the imports. The only thing, the third thing is there's to try and look at a positive view with regards to the international petroleum prices. If the petroleum prices stabilize, remember, we are net importers in the country, so that will mean less dollars going out of the Kenyan economy. So that will create a good element.
It's a good talking point, because as it stands, we expect the price of fuel to rise in the next month or so. That is according to the ministry. So where will that put the shilling dollar debate?
Normally what happens is that we import 2 months with our pricing is a 2-month lag period. Sure. So what we need to look at is what happened around December, January period, so that we can be able to know which direction the fuel prices will go. So internationally, the petroleum prices have remained stable. Despite the Middle East tension, it has remained stable. In fact, there was a slight decline in December. The only challenge came in during the Red Sea attacks on freight. So when there is an attack on the Red Sea, remember that is our main channel in terms of importation, and especially for fuel, the prices, whether it's insurance prices, cost of freight, will tend to go up, meaning that our landing cost will go up. Fortunately, if you look at the EPRA data, it has indicated that both the landing cost has gone down, the international petroleum prices have gone down. The only difference is that the shilling has been losing for that particular period. So if we continue to see a stable international petroleum prices, we tend to see a better shilling performance in the near future, and then stable landing prices, the prices should edge downwards and not upwards. But because we are working on the December, January, and remember this is when the attacks were happening, then the next maybe 1 month or 2 months we'll tend to see a flat price or a mild adjustment, whether it's upward or downwards, but not a drastic, the 7 shillings, the 5 shillings we saw a while back. It will be either a shilling up or a shilling down.
Now, there have been, a lot of conversation regarding the, appreciating or the recovery of the Kenyan shilling against the dollar. Many people are trying to, weigh in on what really has, led to the Kenyan shilling to recover against the dollar. And the CS indicated that the recovery of the Kenyan shilling can be attributed to, investors being assured about, the Eurobond. Can we, can this, point out to, a long-term rally?
Unfortunately, unless the investors are coming into the local economy, then it might not be a long-term rally. In 2021-22, when infrastructure bonds were doing very well, we saw heavy investments in infrastructure bonds by foreigners, and that boosted our reserves heavily. And remember that we need these reserves. Our reserves are right now at 3.8 months of import covered, against a target of 4 months of import cover. So we need to go above the 4 months of import cover for us to be able to convince ourselves that there's going to be stability on that. That is number 1. Number 2, our export declined by 2% in 2023. 2% 2023. However, it was even better supported by a 10.8% decline in import, meaning that we managed to contain the dollar within the Kenyan economy. Unfortunately, the import means that there was a slowdown again in manufacturing. Manufacturing expanded by about 1.9% as of Q3, which is a very slow. And remember that Kenya being one of the major economies in the East and Central Africa countries, we are very big exporters of manufactured products around that region, meaning that again, it affected our ability to export on that. And again, remember, we are paid in dollars. So that slowdown in import, slowdown in export managed to stabilize the currency a little bit. So the investor sentiment is normally very key, because it shows that am I able to come into the market, and will I be able to exit the market without a loss in my currency? So if I'm convinced as an investor that will happen, then I'm able to bring in the investment. So the ability of the government to create an environment that investors trust, they trust the government saying, which means kusema na kutenda, is very key. The ability of the government to give a long-term investment plan or policy is very good for the investor. And remember that one of the key pillars for the Kenya Kwanza government is to try and expand manufacturing as they work on agriculture. As they expand agriculture, value addition will now be pushed to the manufacturing sector. And with a target of about 4.9% expansion in manufacturing in 2024, that means that we are on a good track in trying to expand our export, while that will be able to stabilize the currency.
Now, for the common Kenyan, I included, of course, from your perspective as someone who's expertise in this particular field of matters, economics and all that, what is the immediate impact in your assessment in terms of the recovery of the Kenyan shilling on the economy?
Immediate impact, stronger currency means that imports will be better, will be less currency to go out in terms of paying for our imports. A bad hit on our exports. Remember, a weaker local currency plays a very big important role in the international market for export purpose. So it might hit our import a little bit. Debt repayment, very positive. Again, we'll have less dollars going out compared to what we should have paid along the way. In the month of August and November and December, we normally tend to have very heavy payouts along towards either the Eurobond coupon payments, that is interest payments, or even the international debt repayment. So that will play a very key role on our debt restructuring. So our biggest hit will be on the exports. Our exports will tend to be expensive in the international market.
Now, for a moment, I want us to look at the 5% budget increase that will see the country treated to the biggest budget of around 4 trillion Kenyan shillings. That is despite the debt that continues to rise year in, year out. Now, is this the first policy change that needs probably a shift or something?
I don't know why we are worried about. It's about matching. Most of the time, it's about matching the economic growth and the budgetary growth. If there is a 5% change in budget allocation, and then the economy grows faster than the 5%, then you're in a good trajectory. Number two, where is the 5% going towards? Is it going towards creating an environment where the economy will be able to expand? Then we can be able to accommodate the 5%. If the 5% is going towards infrastructure development, if it's going towards creating an environment that is able to improve on our manufacturing, it's able to go towards an area where we are able to improve on agriculture so that we can be able to improve on our exports, then the 5% is a good take. And remember again, the Kenyan economy is more of what we call an expenditure economy. So the economy is run mostly by expense compared to manufacturing internally, meaning that the government has to spend for you and I to be able to receive our payments so that we can be able to grow and supply to the government again, whether it's tax policy or supplying goods to the government so that it can be able to implement its policies. So that is very important. The only thing that I will request the government to be able to do is to ensure that they reduce on the pending bills, because the pending bills affects you and I, whether it's the SME environment. And the SME again affects the banking sector. The banking sector again affects the risk. It will look at us as a risky client, meaning that our cost of borrowing to be able to go and do business, which will be able to expand the economy, is higher, meaning that our expenses in terms of our cost of financing goes up. And again, if that happens, then we tend to scale down in terms of economic performance. So it tends to have a ripple effect along the way.
Of course, talking about pending bills, the president did appoint the pending bills verification committee. That was a committee that is was aimed at its main priority is looking at all the pending bills that we have as a country, and try and ascertain the genuine ones, in the words of the president, so that we can be able to offset them once and for all. But my question would be, how do we deal with the issue of pending bills once and for all?
It's simple. A simple version is repayment of the pending bills, but it's to look at the procurement procedure so that it can be able to narrow down that extra layer of cost that we get as a client. If I supply goods and I'm paid within the speculated period of about, let's say, an agreed terms of 90 days, then I can be able to negotiate with my financier on the 90 days awaiting period. But if I'm going to take a loan to supply you with goods and then it takes you 3 years to repay me, means that I am affected directly, I can't expand, and at the end of the day, you locking up my money means that there's somebody else not being paid. So looking at the procurement procedure will help us reduce on the cost that we layer up. If it's going to take 6 months to be paid, then I have to include the cost of the 6 months on the procurement procedure. You understand? Okay. So that will be able to cut down on the cost. So if I'm paid more frequently, then I'm able to reduce the cost that I will hit the government with. That is number one. Number two, also to look at the ability to, I don't know how to say it, the audit process in terms of the procurement chain has to ensure that we give the best or the lowest costing guy that particular tender, because it comes into is it a corruption the process that is going to push up the cost? But if it's a normalized process, then we'll tend to see the pending bills paid. But first of all, the government needs to ensure that it reduces on the level of the pending bills, which will be able to give money to the supplier's pocket, and they can be able to reduce on their cost at the financial sector.
Now, talking about the ever-changing exchange rate, how does it impact on our plan as a country in terms of debt repayment?
Oh, it does big time, because at the beginning of the year when they're doing the budget, they try to simulate how much depreciation of the currency will happen, and then they try to price it in terms of the cost of financing, whether it's the domestic lending, the payment, or the international payment. But international payment are of key concern. And then now they have to review how much inflows they're expecting, whether it's in terms of grants or expected loans, because they have to create a pipeline in terms of debt. So it comes to play in very important during the budget session that when they price it, it needs to either be the same or lower. Because if it overshoots, means that the government has to reprise on the repayment, or they have to reduce on the borrowing schedule, again, which will affect the local economy.
Now, Kenyans at the moment, are paying very high interest rates through various banks, so bank facilities in the country. Now, how do we link this? Where is the link between the interest rates and the rate of the shilling against the dollar?
Okay, what happened is that when the Monetary Policy Committee reviews the different elements that goes towards the pricing of the central bank rate, the CBR, which normally happens after every other month, the pricing, the CBR rate, the central bank rate, plays a key important role in pricing of the loans. It plays a key important rate in pricing of the levels of government borrowing, whether it's internally or externally. It plays a very big role into seeing on how inflation will be affected. Remember, inflation looks at how depreciating of the currency you're holding, your savings or your investment, happens over a period of time. So when it happens in that level, the lenders have to price all these elements into their costing. And that's the reason why we got the Eurobond at 9.75 compared to the 9.25 that we had previously when the CBR rate was 7% or even about 8%. Now the CBR rate is at 13%, meaning that even the banks have to price that into their lending. So whenever the CBR rate goes high, the banks have to reprice that particular element into their lending, meaning that again, even internationally, it has to be priced. So that affects the Kenya shillings. The ability of money to flow in and out of the country is very much affected.
Let's talk about the Eurobond, and then it's safe to say the IMF sort of save the country from the stress surrounding, or the repayment of the Eurobond 2014 Eurobond that we took. Now, from where you sit, how do you assess the country's ability to repay its debts? Because some would say we've not solved the problem, we've only pushed the problem forward.
It's not about pushing the problem forward. The work of the government is to create an environment that is able to generate flows into the economy. Most of the time you'll find that it's not about the debt. The debt will always be there. Every time the debt will be there. So it's about the ability to repay, like you've said, and at what cost. Because if you're getting it cheaper, then better for us. If you're getting it expensive, it's not good for the economy. So debt will always be there. Let's not be afraid of debt as a country, because that debt is what helps us to grow. So one thing we now need to look at is the composition of the government debt. In the initial stage, 2015, when we were doing the Thika Road and the introduction of the SGR, we were doing heavily commercial debt. Commercial debt have shorter term and are very expensive. Short term, very expensive. Now, over a period of time, we've started repaying the debt. I believe the first SGR repayment was, if I'm not wrong, 2019. I'm not sure about that, but around 2019. And then there was a Eurobond that was happening in 2019, which we repaid a five-year Eurobond in 2019, and that is what went to a restructuring of the 2032 and 2048 Eurobond. So it's all about the restructuring of the composition of the government debt. So we were heavily on the commercial debt. Back then, our what we call multilateral debt was at 23%. Our multilateral debts are cheap, better terms, and are longer terms, 25 to 30 years, and they're very cheap. Now, at that particular time, you have a 5 to 10 year debt that you are being charged 8%, 9% on the dollar. That is very expensive. So you need to ensure that you make the repayment on the expensive debt and retain the long-term cheaper debt. So what the government has done, and has done very well, is trying to restructure that debt portfolio. So we're seeing that the multilateral debt has increased from 23% in, if I'm not wrong, the beginning of the fiscal year 2022 to 30% as of late as December 2023, meaning that we have a wider scope of cheaper debt than expensive debt, and these debt are longer term debt. So the restructuring between the commercial debt and the IMF debt is a positive thing for the Kenyan economy. So it's not about the debt, it's about the composition of the debt, meaning that over a long period of time, it should be cheaper for us to repay this debt compared to if they are very expensive. The only thing we need to do as a country now is to try and reduce on the Eurobond debt, because they have remained very expensive for the local economy.
Now, talking about the factors that that we can credit the recovery of the shillings to, and just to get the figures right, is that the Kenyan government received $2 billion in demand for a shilling denominated bond of $500 million. Which of the two factors can we sort of credit the recovery of the shilling to?
I will put it on the international, more of the international effect than the local effect. The Eurobond repayment played a very big role. The IMF financing, 645 million that came in January, played a very big role. The panic by local retailers who are able to dictate a sudden rush in the market played a very big role. And then when you look at the recent infrastructure bond that was released in the month of February, where we received about 280 and you accept about 240 40 billion shillings, also played a key role. Remember that when you look at the pricing of the Eurobond, the coupon that it was given, you'll be able to see that it was very cheap than what the market expected. The market was expecting the government to give it at about 19.3 to 19.5%. The government gave it at 18.45%. Meaning what? There are international players who came into the market with big tickets, meaning that the big amounts, which are able to contain the price downward. So that inflow by international players played two key things, meaning that the international investors are coming back into the country, and another thing is that inflow in the dollar helped into cushioning our forex reserves.
Now, the dollar at the moment last time I checked, which is today morning, was around 144 shillings.
Yes.
In your assessment, do you think it can stay there for some time, or can it even get lower?
I don't think it's going to get lower. The fundamentals that support that movement are not strong enough. Let's remove the recent, can I call it noise, we like it as a straight line, whether it's going up or going down. We like it as straight line going up or a straight line going down. So whenever it's oscillating, is not a good thing. So what we're looking at is a sudden volatility of the shilling, whether it's up or down, which is not sustainable. There has to be a normalization of that currency. Now, the normalization is brought in by the fundamentals about that. So the one thing that will be able to bring in the dollar to a stronger point is to improve on our export, improve on our investors coming to the countries, whether it's short-term or long-term, meaning that we are going to get dollar inflows. But as long as our reserves remain below the government target of 4.0 months of import cover, the shilling is not able to contain that strengthening. And again, in the month of June, we are going to have repayments of Eurobond coupons, which will have a very big impact on our reserves. And then August, remember we've taken another Eurobond. So August, we are going to see a flow out. In November, there's a flow out, and then December, there's a flow out. So those particular repayments will be able to hit on our reserves. So that will be able to create a little bit of weakness on the Kenya shillings compared to everything else.
Just to be clear, what is your forecast? By the end of 2024, what are we staring at in terms of?
It's very hard to focus an exact amount. What I can be able to say,
region maybe.
It's very. We had focused these shillings at the beginning of the year. Majority of investors, what we did is analysts. What we did, we look at the average trend. And we saw that there was a consistency of about 1.8 to 2% depreciation month on month on the currency. So if you use that on the lower end, you use 1.8. And on the other upper end, you use 2.0, you'll be able to see it will approach 196 to 200 shillings on the dollar. But now we've seen changes. So it's not the normal scenario. We've seen that it was already depreciated by 11% within 22 days. So we need to now see the normalization again for us to be able to focus which direction. And then number two, we have to see what the government policy changes, and especially with regards to the CS Treasury and the central bank governor are going to do, and especially in the next CBK monetary policy meeting, which is happening in, if I'm not wrong, April. So that will be able to give a key indicator on which direction it will be able to take. But as of for the time being, we continue to monitor the discussion and the triggers that the two key players are giving into the market. Overall, whenever we see IMF coming to the country, is a positive thing because they are giving us cheap money at a longer term. So that play will be able to stabilize the currency longer. So I will say a slight depreciation. I do not want to give a range. It is not improper for the time being. Maybe when you call me later after the April policy discussion, we can be able to give a direction.
Now, according to the Kenya Kwanza administration, of course, and the president himself did say this, they entered into the G2G oil deal with the intention or with the hope that it would help the stabilizing the dollar against the shilling, but it didn't really work. Why did it not achieve its intention then?
It depends on how you look at it. It somehow did. I can confidently say that G2G deal somehow did. Every month there is an outflow of $400 million going towards petroleum purchase that comes into the country. So if you're able to lag the $400 million by even 1 month, means that there's a little bit of stability in the currency. That is number one. The G2G again tended to give a little bit of sanity in terms of the pricing of the dollar. Remember the pricing of the fuel, and also the pricing, the timing of that fuel. So it played a very big role. And that, if you look at before the G2G, you'll tend to see that the depreciation levels were faster though above 3%. By the way, if you look at before the G2G announcement, the depreciation of the Kenya shillings was about 3% to 3.5%. The moment that G2G announcement came in, it went down to 1.5% per month depreciation. So that G2G kicked in a little bit of element. Now, unfortunately, it merged with the announcement by, like I said, the credit rate rating companies, which said that the Kenyan economy is not able to sustain liquidity, is not able to repay the debt. There is a challenge in terms of dollar reserves. So that intersection of the announcement and the news did not show that the G2G had an impact into the Kenyan economy. But the reality of the matter, if you look at before the G2G, the shilling was depreciating faster than after the G2G agreement.
Now, the government did, put the volatility of, Kenyan shilling purely on the high demand of dollars in the energy sector in 2023, I believe. In your opinion, did the government get it wrong?
No. Like I said, 400 million out of the economy in one go is a very big amount. And remember that at that particular time, before the G2G agreement, again, we need to look at how our reserves were. We were at about 5.8 months of import cover. It was falling very fast. 5.8, it started going down. We had reached 3.2 months of import cover. So anything that would have helped the reversal of that import cover played a very big important role. And when you look at the timings again, you'll be able to see the G2G, that particular the outflow tended to stabilize the month of import cover. From the 3.2, it went up to 3.5, and we've been playing at about 3.8, and the 3.8 is mostly sustained by the concessionary support we've been getting from the IMF.
Now, finally, because we're sort of also running out of time, we've talked about and you've explained the immediate impact of the Kenyan shilling recovery against the dollar. In terms of going forward in the long term, what are we staring at?
We're still staring a little bit of challenge in terms of repayment of the global the international debt. We still don't have adequate reserves, and that will again have an impact on the shilling. So that's the reason why I said we'll tend to see a depreciation of the shilling in the long term. What I can tell investors, and especially retail investors, they need to reduce the panic, and they're the ones who are creating this volatility in the currency. They need to look at it on a long-term structure. That was just a one-off news. We don't have a consistent in terms of positive news. So they need to still contain their dollars, and it also helps in terms of stabilizing. Remember that when we do these local letter of credit by banks, they tend to do it in dollars. So any deposit that they get in dollars will tend to stabilize the Kenyan currency indirectly, one way or another. So those reserves that the retail clients have, they need to contain it. It's a very positive investment. Number two is that they need to take advantage of government securities lending. The central bank has made it very easy for retail clients to invest in the government bond. Number one is that there is now an app where a client can invest in. Number two is that they've reduced the amount to 50,000. So they're very good investment. And for those who cannot be able to get into that aspect, they need to bring this money to the money market space. Remember that money market space have created very good elements in terms of dollar funds. So if you do not trust your holding in the banks in terms of dollars, then you can be able to give it to professional investors who can be able to generate a little bit of return on that. So anybody who's holding dollars in the local economy, that should not create a panic on that. It affects the currency when the local mwananchi panics. So we need to look at it in the long term. I still believe that the currency and the regulators and the government are doing everything that they're able to do so that they can be able to have a positive review. But at the end of the day, if we are able to get a slower depreciation compared to what we had seen last year, the 26% annual depreciation, then we will have done a very good as the local economy.
Now, finally, the president has been talking about, the Kenyan economy stabilizing. And he said, with time, eventually we will get back to where we were, because he talked about, He's been dealing with the issue of, repaying debt and all that. But as he sorts that out, in the months to come, the economy will, be back to where it is. How would you forecast the, Kenyan economy this year? Will it, are we looking as a country at a situation where, things will eventually, come back to normal in terms of, the cost of living as well?
What we've seen is that one of the economic advisors for the government, and he's always been prominent on X and every other platform, and he said very well that what we are looking for is the immediate impact into the Kenyan economy, the short-term effect that we can be able to get. And we've seen that one of the elements that the government has been focusing on is agriculture. And remember, agriculture, as you can call it, a seasonal element. It plays a very big role into the Kenyan economy. Agriculture contributes 22% to the Kenyan GDP, so it's a very big impact on that. So them restructuring agriculture plays a very important role. And a very good example I can give you is that when agriculture was down, I believe in 2021, 2022, when there was a drought, there was a negative growth in terms of agriculture expansion. It was a negative 1.6%. The economy only grew by 4.8%. Now we've seen agriculture growing by 6.6% in Q3, quarter 3, 2023. The economy grew by 5.9%. So anything that touches agriculture will have a very immediate impact on it, and that is where the government focus in. Now, on the other hand, if you're looking at manufacturing, it tends to have a lag. You're not going to import the machine, import the raw material and have an impact immediately. It will tend to have a 1 year or a 2 year lag. So what they've done, and the government is doing very well, is that they're looking at the short wins, which will tend to turn the immediate economy, and then we can have the long-term strategies working on it. If we have agriculture in place and we're able to produce, then the manufacturing and what you call value improvement can come in later. So that will tend to have a long-term strategy on that. So for 2024, two things will play very key. Number one, agriculture. Number two, service sector. Agriculture being that we have already forecast a positive rainfall. The meteorological have said that we are going to have above normal rainfall during the planting season, meaning that our harvest will be positive. So it's a thumbs up for agriculture. If agriculture grows, the economy grows. And then number two, the service sector. Tourism is improving, financial sector is improving, which other hotel and accommodation is improving. So we'll tend to see a positive review on the what we call the bulk end of the economy. So even if the industry sector slows us down, on average we'll tend to have a positive review of positive growth in terms of the economy. So the government projection of about 5.7, I will say I will go with the government with the 5.7 growth in 2024.
I know I've said finally a couple of times, but I was looking for the Daily Nation this morning because they're saying there are certain policies that might help the country to be out of the debt hole, and I'll pick only three. One is that borrowing should not exceed the 722 billion mark in the 2024-25 financial year. The second one is that to allocate 150 billion annually over the next 5 years to pay suppliers to boost the private sector. And the third one, of course, is a transparent government plan on the depreciating shilling as well as Eurobond repayment. Do you think those policies can help get the country out of the debt hole?
I'll start with the second one. Repayment of suppliers, very positive. We've seen the non-performing loans in banks going up, meaning that there are people struggling to make the repayment. If those people are struggling, means that they're not able to borrow to expand their businesses. And remember that this country depends about 80% on SMEs. So if SMEs are able to expand, the economy is able to expand. On the first one, if we get cheaper loans to pay out the more expensive loans, then I will support that. However, if you're going for more expensive loans, which have stringent terms, then we should not surpass that. If we're able to change the mix of the loans in terms of what you call the tenure and also the pricing of the loans, means that we'll be making lesser repayment, holding back money into the economy. So why not? Let's work on that. If you can be able to restructure the loan, it will be positive. What was the third one?
The third one was a transparent government plan on the depreciating shilling as well as Eurobond repayment.
Eurobond repayment is positive. We are working. We've already done that, so that should not be a very good role. The depreciation of the shillings. At the end of the day, the global economy and the global markets should be able to dictate which direction even the Kenya shillings happens. Remember that one of the key elements that happened along the way is that the developed countries hiked their rates. When the developed countries hiked their rates, that means they were more lucrative in investment than investing in emerging markets. So if there's no flows coming into the emerging markets, then the currency cannot stabilize. So we need to see the reversal of the international market before we have the ripple effect into the Kenyan market. And one of the things we need to know is that when the US hikes their rate, we'll tend to see a lag of about a month, and then the Kenya will have a hike. The day that the US and the UK start cutting on their rates, then we'll tend to see a reversal of flows into the emerging markets, and that will enable us to stabilize the currency and also the central bank to cut on the rate.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this particular morning to expound on matters the Kenyan economy and, the Eurobond repayment and, buyback and all that debate surrounding the, Kenyan shilling recovery against the dollar. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Welcome again. Now, that was the conversation here on the Morning Drift this particular morning, the 22nd of February 2024. Many thanks for joining us. It is now exactly 9:26. My director has been, yelling, Keitani, Maliza show. Well, thank you very much. See you again tomorrow here on the Morning Drift. But remember, you can visit our website www.lookuptv.co.ke just to get an overview of the stories making headlines not only here in the country, but as well across the borders. Until then, do have yourself a wonderful day, and like always, God bless.